It's time to strap in for another edition of the CarsGuide Podcast, the show that takes you beyond the test drive. This is episode number 227, Aftermarket versus Factory Ute Mods. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and who else would be joining this podcast looking at the ins and outs of mods and accessories for your ute than Adventure Editor Marcus Craft. G'day, Crafty.
Hello, everyone.
And our Bush Curious Managing Editor, Head of Video, Matt Campbell.
Hello, and thank you.
We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving this week and dive into your feedback. YouTubers, you can jump ahead to each section of the show via the time codes in the notes or chapter markers in the timeline. So let's go. And look, all jokes aside, this is really a Crafty special. When you already have or you're thinking about a ute, which direction do you go in for mods and or accessories? The dealer or the aftermarket or DIY? Plenty to consider. Price, quality, warranty, ease of fitment. Crafty, kick us off. Where do we, if you're in that situation, what are the things that you should be considering with mods and accessories?
Well, Joe, so you've pretty much summed up all the crucial factors that I guess most people will take into account when they are considering this. Obviously, it's the convenience factor. If you're buying from a showroom and you want it to roll out ready to go with a snorkel and a bull bar and all that sort of stuff, then that's very convenient. And also, you come in terms of warranty, you are on the moral high ground. DIY, don't know. I'd probably avoid that, mate, because that's fraught with lots of issues.
If you can't get it happening with a coat hanger, some gaffer tape, and some stockings, it's not worth doing.
Where I grew up, mate, up in Bundaberg, there are a lot of bull bars that strangely look like pool fences to me. When they looked like they'd been lifted off someone's pool.
The best one was a mate of mine who had a little HB Tirana back in the day, made his own bull bar, and when he bolted it on, realised that the main beams on either side were straight in front of the headlights. It got to the point where he was actually fixing it on the car and realised that
it's very handy.
Maybe DIY isn't the go.
Yeah, and if anyone's familiar with me at all and my yarns and my time on the podcast and with CarsGuide and 4x4 Australia, they'll know that I'm a massive fan of the Australian aftermarket industry, and that for me has set the gold standard for the world for years, 20, 30 years, and I'm talking about big mobs like ARB, Ironman 4x4, TJM, Oppie Lock, Opposite Lock, all those sort of mobs. And there's a lot of smaller independent companies that are doing really good products. And these are products that are tested, obviously, in Australia, in Australian conditions. Very, it's a tough environment. We've got some tough tracks, some tough roads. So to be able to cope with those sort of high stress demands is crucial, and Australian companies do that better than anyone.
And I think there's also been in recent years a real change in the dynamic of what the aftermarket is responsible for. With increased levels of safety equipment on board in these vehicles, they have to think about that as well as what they always engineered the vehicle or the part for the vehicle to do. So they have to be mindful of radar systems or camera systems that look forward in front of the vehicle so that, nothing's triggering the camera. It's not going to think that you're riding on someone's tailgate when it sees the edges of the hoops of the bull bar or something like that.
That's right,
so there's a lot that goes into it. And, crash worthiness, airbag, how it reacts when there's a crash and the airbags go off and that sort of stuff. So that's just bull bars. But, you think of all the stuff that you can add to a modern day ute or four-wheel drive. And, you're talking about a full-scale armour around the vehicle.
It's interesting. If you fitted everything, I think that the tyres would pop because there'd just be too much weight on board. But I did a bit of digging around a lot of the OEM, consumer websites, and there's just this laundry list of stuff. I mean, it obviously people do want to personalise their ute. They want to for a specific purpose or maybe the way it looks. But it's everything from rubber mats and tow bars and bull bars and nudge bars and tonneaus and tub mats and snorkels and weather shields and headlight protectors and towing mirrors and suspension upgrades. And Crafty, I noticed that there are a few where you have, say it's a worn winch, that Toyota and Nissan will offer a worn winch as an accessory that their dealer presumably, or they somehow fit. What's the go there? If you're thinking about a winch, Warn has a good reputation. Are you going to do that through the dealer? Maybe it's a better price in the aftermarket. I don't know which way to go.
Yeah, I guess that comes down to your personal preferences and the research that you do. Again, it's the convenience factor if it's rolling straight out with the winch on and everything else on. I just wanted to go back to Matt's point and touch on that, because for many years, in terms of research and development, Australian companies, again, like ARB and those sort of mobs, have again really set the standard, because they don't take it lightly. And as Matt mentioned, as soon as you start impacting driver assist technology, then it's a moot point. Like, you can't put that aftermarket gear on. So these companies get vehicles sometimes long before they're made available to the public, and they target this thing and they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they make sure that they're not voiding any warranty, or they're not impacting any driver assist tech. And I mean, now they've got entire teams that's their job, to figure out, how to do things safely, how to make them effective, and how to make them cost effective for the company in terms of, actually engineering and creating the things. But also, more importantly, how to keep the vehicle's integrity intact, like not affected at all.
And how much, Crafty, would it get to the point where the aftermarket particular businesses have teams that approach that? What about collaboration between them and the manufacturer? Is there a lot of that, or a bit of a line of demarcation between the two? I suppose it's in both parties' interest to get it right.
Yeah, well, that's another really good point, and I'm sure Matt can probably flesh this out after I bombard you with stuff. But a really great case in point is Ford and the new Ranger and Everest. That sort of collaboration, and I think that's the way of the future. I think companies for a long time have seen the value in establishing a really strong relationship with a well-known and well-respected brand. Again, like ARB. An Australian company that's well respected around the world. Like, that's a global behemoth. That's and Ford recognises that, and that's such a great, for want of a less annoying word, synergy, because ARB make great products.
You've got to punctuate that, by the way, Crafty. You missed it.
Oh, damn it!
You missed it.
Oh, damn it! Yeah. So products that really suit those vehicles, and a really good way of doing it. Like, I've liked the classy way that's been presented to the public. And if you were a Ranger or Everest fan before, or even if you weren't, I mean, they've had some sort of eye-catching promotions about that tie-in, about the ARB and the Ford sort of collaboration. So,
and on that topic with Ford, they've obviously listened to the customer base and listen to what they want, because, in their 10 things you need to know about the new Ranger, there's a shot of a space under the bonnet for a second battery, and
battery system. Yeah.
Those sorts of things, you don't necessarily find in every vehicle that you might want to add a second battery to for a dual battery system for your fridge or whatever it may be, so there's a lot of listening happening from the brands, because they realize that this is a market that can be tapped pretty easily. For example, my dad with his Isuzu Ute, he had the choice of 5 trays for a cab chassis Ute, and that's through the manufacturer. If he went to the aftermarket, it grows exponentially, because you can have whatever you want made for it. But again, the tray that was fitted is designed for the purpose. It's not going to affect any of the safety systems. It's all legit, I guess you might say. And you don't, I guess, in my mind, you do sort of have a slight risk factor if you do go to the aftermarket. If you are asking someone else to make your brand new vehicle better than it was designed to be, then you're always going to run a slight risk that it won't be as good as it could have been. That's my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, I suppose also if you're Ford and you've got the Ranger, and all of a sudden it's designed largely and engineered and developed in Australia, but for global markets, there are things that are going to be priorities in Australia that may not be the same in the US. So you have to be thinking and listening, as you say, Matt, all the time, but to a pretty broad audience. And maybe on not so much compromises, but you just have to think creatively to be able to accommodate that in various parts of the world.
And I think the other thing that, probably the most common upgrade for any off-road available vehicle, as Crafty says in pretty much every review he does, is the tires. Tires are the shortcoming in so many of these vehicles because they're designed for a cost, for a reliability standpoint, for a quietness standpoint. They've got to be durable on-road as well as off-road. So you might have a very light-duty all-terrain tire on a lot of these vehicles. And that's the first thing that people swap out. The wheels as well. A lot of people don't like the alloy wheels that they get on these higher spec utes in particular. The number of 18-inch alloy wheels that you find on Gumtree and those sorts of places people have just taken off because they've either put a steel wheel with a muddy on it or whatever. It's just a simple upgrade that people can make, and it's not going to avoid your warranty, and you're not going to get in trouble from the cops unless it's exceeding the limits of what it's designed to accommodate. There's stuff that you can do that might not necessarily cost you tens of thousands of dollars, but could give you considerably better usability for your vehicle.
That's an instant improvement in off-road ability, isn't it? I mean, you throw the tyres on and you sort the pressures out. I just wanted to quickly say that it's good because you can spend as much money or as little money as you want. I mean, you can go full bore and you can stack the thing with aftermarket gear and, it looks like it's ready for the zombie apocalypse. Yeah. Or as Matt said, you can just do the tyres, maybe a mild suspension lift, and that's it. Maybe you get a storage platform for the roof. So the good thing is it's up to the owner and the owner's lifestyle. And before I just realised I might upset a few of my DIY mates. The point is that for better or worse, we all like picking up the tools, but that can create problems, probably more so for me than a lot of our listeners, in terms of, how you affect the vehicle and whether you are impacting the warranty or the driver assist tech. So I certainly wouldn't, encourage people not to do that, but I think wherever you are, state or territory, make sure you are aware of the law there, especially in terms of suspension lifts and that sort of thing. That and also the warranty on your vehicle and how your work will affect the vehicle's safety.
I think to your point, Matt, there's nothing quite as satisfying as grabbing the sledgy. It doesn't have to be a full-size one, maybe a smaller one, and just encouraging a rim back into its original shape. That's very, very, very good. And I do know, Crafty, you changed your middle name via deed poll. You now have two middle names, Tyre Pressure. So it's Marcus Tyre Pressure Craft, which is
TP, which is
TP, impressive.
Which is unfortunately what a lot of people say about toilet paper, TP. So unfortunately,
it's sad. But what are you going to do? The other thing is, I noticed out of any of the manufacturers, Toyota goes down the road of the work site. In fact, a mining kind of environment. Now they have a whole bunch of mods and accessories that are around that because they have large fleet customers that use their vehicles in that environment. They've got reflective tape, illuminated flags, side steps and grab rails and protectors for windows and all of that. They've obviously decided they want to cut of that business because there are a lot of people out there doing it, but they go hard at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's been a lucrative slice of the market for quite some time. And I mean, that's a matter of necessity. I mean, the vehicle has to cope in remote area conditions, and we all know they're the harshest of the harsh in terms of terrain and heat and everything else that you've got to contend with. So that's why they have rock sliders and everything to ensure that vehicle will continue, and someone gets out to a work site and then back to where they've got to get accommodation or whatever safely.
Yes. I noticed also in terms of special mentions, I went to the Jeep site for the Gladiator. You can actually acquire an American flag decal for the bonnet and an Army Star graphic for the side. So I don't know what the uptake has been on that in Australia, but I thought it was worth a special call out. You can do that if you want to do it.
Yeah. There you go.
The other one is Mazda and Toyota will sell you a UHF radio, which is something that a bit of an outlier. Not many people were doing that. Mitsubishi for the Triton will sell you a 4-wheel drive decal set that just says 4-wheel drive, includes left hand and right hand, $129.
Wow.
For your decal set.
It's one of the best lightweight mods you can do.
Yeah, that's it. That improves performance no end.
As well as some stickers that look like mud or bullet holes.
Yeah, that's right. So. You mentioned Crafty suspension upgrades, and a lift kit is a pretty common one. Mazda offers one through their site, pardon me, but it's actually an ARB kit, heavy duty. So there again, that collaboration is obviously hand in glove. But Mazda's almost won out in offering that. I couldn't find much evidence of that elsewhere.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's going to become even more comprehensive as we go on. You know, Utes have been the big sellers for years and years in Australia, and while it may be quietly. Up till now, quietly ticking over in the background, like these collaborations and these agreements, and I'll give you these products and whatever. I think it's just going to intensify, as the Ford and ARB sort of partnership shows these things, and people love them. People will spend, like Matty said earlier on, people will spend tens of thousands of dollars, and that's being conservative on all the gear and whatever. Maybe it spends, maybe it goes out to the desert, once a year or once every 5 years, but people love the lifestyle, and
we all know that bloke that decides to put a pie oven in his Amarok. Hey?
Yeah.
The another one that I thought was worth mentioning, and I reckon this would be worth having a lash at as a DIY, is for your Toyota Hilux canvas seat covers. Unreal. I was so surprised to see that, and I thought, canvas seat covers, what a great idea.
Wow.
Washable, tough, all of that. I reckon I could have a red hot go at that. And
very uncomfortable.
If
you're wearing shorts and a singlet, or if you go to the beach and you got sand on you, very uncomfortable.
You'll have a muddy greenhouse in your trousers.
Oh dear. Well,
if you're up in Queensland now.
That's the Toyota version. Mine would be breathable, the highest quality material. The seams may be visible, but you never know. All right, so thank you. That was a great discussion, Crafty. It's pretty wide ranging, isn't it? A pretty fertile ground for consideration when you're an SUV owner or prospective owner. But I think from there, we will move on to our garage and talk about what we've been driving in the last week or so. And Matt, can I start with you, please? The clue is already visible to people watching on YouTube.
Yeah, it is. I've been driving my long-term Kia Sportage GT-Line turbo petrol DCT standing for dual clutch transmission. And this is a car I've been spending the last 5 months or 5,500 kilometers in.
Wow. Yeah.
So I've got to know this vehicle very well. As you can see from the images on YouTube, if you're watching there, I had a genuine Kia roof rack that I fit to it myself, and also Yakima cargo box on top. So I believe Yakima is the genuine partner that Kia uses in Australia to use for its roof racks and its roof systems, essentially.
And you've got a bassinet in there for your baby girl, haven't you? That basically takes her out of play pretty easily.
Oh, is she not supposed to ride up there?
Oh, that's right.
No, so that for us, because we've got a baby girl and 2 dogs, for us, we had to put a bunch of baby stuff up there, but also we put the dog beds in a plastic bag up there. So, they're not getting the dog smell inside the car. It means that, you can still fully load the boot, but still see out the back window. which is something that I like to be able to do. I know, if you fill up the boot and you can't see out the back, you're relying on your side mirrors. Obviously, these cars like this have heaps and heaps of safety equipment to stop you from merging into someone behind you or whatever. But I just like to be able to see out the back. But the roof pod, it's been essential for us for a really long week away that we did, big trip and lots of Ks covered, and it's just easy to put a bunch of stuff up there that you don't need to access as soon as you arrive, sort of thing. So
can you feel the downforce in the corners? Gives you a bit of extra traction.
I wouldn't say it was Formula One like, but you can hear it whistling above you, and it negates the point of the big panoramic sunroof a little bit when you've got a pod on top. But in other news about this car, I wouldn't recommend the 1.6 with the dual clutch. My wrap-up video review will go into a fair bit more detail on it, so stay tuned for that. But definitely, after collecting a diesel version of the exact spec yesterday, the diesel is definitely the better vehicle to go for. So if you are considering a Sportage, make sure you check it out. Super.
Good on you. Thanks, Matt. Now, Crafty, you've been dabbling in an area that you maybe haven't dabbled a lot in, but tell us what you've been up to.
I spent the last 5 weeks riding in the roof pod on Matt's.
I heard a knocking in there.
You cut the eye hole so you can look down through the roof.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
No, JC, I've actually been in electric vehicles, or EV, for those of you who are much cooler than I. And I had a ball. I was in an Ioniq 5 first up. Just to give everyone a bit of background, we did a comparison. The yarn will be on the carsguide.com.au website in the next, week or so, as well as a comprehensive video. We had 4 vehicles. We had the BMW something, Matt, help me out here.
iX.
That's correct. we actually had a Kia. And
EB6.
That's it. As well as the Ioniq 5 and the Polestar 2. Which I spent a bit of time. I spent a bit of time in all of them, but I spent the lion's share of my time in the Ioniq 5 initially and the Polestar 2 when the test wrapped up. Unbelievable. And I can see, and this will be a whole nother podcast for us, I can see now, having been in the seat for a chunk of time, that EVs are solidly the way of the future, and solidly the way of the future for off-road vehicles. Obviously, technology is going to have to change, and we'll get into that in another podcast, and power systems and processes and that sort of thing. But so quiet, so nice to drive. There are sort of quibbles here and there in terms of ride quality and build quality. But, yeah, a whole lot of fun, really smooth. I was surprised some of them chewed up a bit more power at pace than others, and charging is still not a convenient thing. I stood at the end of the test for an hour and a half to get it up from, I won't mention the vehicle, it'll all come out in the end, but to get it from about 39% to a comfortable 97%, because I had quite a long drive.
Well, I was talking to you while you were out there, and I remember suggesting you should just duck into Coles and get one of those economy packs of batteries and just
36
a little bit
AAAs.
of soldering iron and plug it in.
Yeah, no.
No.
But charge points are a problem. Sorry, I'll just be really quick, because when I picked up the vehicle initially, I went to charge points that were listed nearby me on maps. The problem is you get there, one's offline, another one's parked in by a guy in a petrol vehicle who couldn't give a rat's about the plug point for an EV. So there are those sort of issues. And it's nowhere near as convenient as just ripping into the corner servo and topping up or whatever. And so road trips, demand a lot more planning and a lot more consideration. But all in all, I had a great time.
Interesting. Oh, that's good. Great. Okay, Crafty, we'll be looking forward to that. I'll finish it off, funnily enough, with a ute. Now, where am I? It was the BT-50. I think it was an SP, and we're talking in the mid 60K range, 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel. 6-speed auto, and it's pretty up there in terms of its spec. It has leather, it has the dual climate control, all of that kind of stuff. I found it to be relatively comfy. I had a pretty brutal experience in a D-Max a little while ago, and this one being a very much comparable vehicle in terms of what's under the skin, all of a sudden you're in a much more civilized car. And the downside is, yes, it's a little bit noisy. The diesel is going to come as a surprise if you're not used to that, but there's plenty of room, plenty of spec, plenty of safety. And I think in summing it up, our eldest daughter, who's 21, wants one. She's driving a 10-year-old Yaris at the moment. She's like, wow. Oh, look at that thing. Wow. What if I got a dual cab ute? Okay. So it does look appealing. It's in a paint called concrete. And I remember there was an FJ Cruiser Toyota color called cement. So it's kind of the battle of the building materials.
Yes.
So that's gone very well. So I enjoyed it, and I think even up at that money, there is the value in the car if you're in that part of the market for that kind of ute.
For a little bit of context, JC, you were driving a D-Max SX single cab chassis with nothing in the tray, compared to a dual cab Mazda BT-50, which is designed for comfort. So
well, that's it. So look, I'll be the first one to admit that it's not my area of fine detail expertise. But yeah, that D-Max was punishing. I just found it.
And I think I said this to you.
But they all are.
I said this to JC on the phone, that's probably one of the better examples of a single cab chassis.
It can be a lot harsher. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was quite an experience. So this one was different. All right. Now, let me see. We are at feedback time. And comment of the week. It's on top of the shipping container at the front of the CarsGuide forecourt, bunting, balloons, and Hammer Rocks. Crafty, I thought it was super appropriate. Your mate, Hammer.
Yep.
We were talking about why are Aussies such bad drivers last week, and it got a bit of commentary. And Hammer made, I thought, a very interesting point. He said, I had a philosophy professor that once said if the majority of law-abiding citizens regularly break a particular law, then there's something wrong with that law. Either it's seen as irrelevant for the situation it's for, or it's out of touch with the times. A great example of this, freeway motorway speed limits, which are set back in the 70s in New South Wales. The 110 km/h speed limit of the M1 motorway between Sydney and Newcastle is frequently exceeded by most motorists.
To say the least.
And we're sure around Joel's Bridge, where the M1 have several tighter bends, it needs to be slower. The rest can handle faster speed limits. And, Fat Man Overlanding chimed in and said, various Australian bodies responsible for building our future motorways should take notes from the Germans. And he had a couple of points. He alleges there are no inclines greater than 10 degrees, so trucks don't lose too much momentum, and that corners are only of a certain radius. They have to be less than a certain radius, so that you can take them at a relatively high speed. But having said that, I would argue, on knowing that bit of road as all of us do, it's an exceptionally good dual carriageway. It's in great shape and could, without a doubt in my mind, accept a slightly higher speed limit. But there you go. And I think that's true. And we mentioned in the podcast about if enough people ignore a particular rule, guideline or law, there are some jurisdictions where people are allowed to drive for a while, that the average speed is gauged and then the speed limit's set. Let's see, people don't want to kill themselves. They want to drive at a speed that they're comfortable with. Let's see what that is and then think about a speed limit rather than this arbitrary, this is going to be such and such kilometres an hour. So it's an interesting point.
Yep.
All right. With that, we have reached the finish line. So I want to say thank you, Crafty.
No, thank you.
And thank you, Matt.
It's been a pleasure.
And thanks to our production polymath, kazoo tuner, and rocket recovery technician, Mr. Pritchard, for his continuing commitment to podcast excellence. Today, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, if I'm ever on life support, unplug me. Then plug me back in, see if that works. Shark pants and socks that look like sandals. Jump into the conversation. Cars Guides on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Apple Podcast listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the Cars Guide YouTube channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, did you hear Neil Diamond's listed his Volvo for sale on eBay? It's a Swede car online.
Oh, God.